You ever had your morning peace shattered before the coffee even cools in your mug? That was me, standing barefoot on my dock, steam curling into the lake mist when a voice snapped through the silence. "You're not in the HOA, so this lake isn't yours." At first, I thought I'd misheard. But then I turned, and there she was. Clipboard clutched to her chest like it was a badge, eyes squinting at me like I'd trespassed on my own land. My first reaction wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was disbelief. Who walks onto a man's property at 7 in the morning and tells him he doesn't own what he worked his entire life to buy? The wood under my feet was damp, still holding last night's dew, and my boots left by the porch had a thin coat of dust from yesterday's walk around the trail. Ordinary details, ordinary life, until someone comes barging in claiming authority where they have none. She slapped a yellow sticker on my dock post, the sound sharp like a slap across the face. HOA safety check passed, the bold print read. A QR code sat beneath, gleaming in the soft sun. I swear the bitterness hit my tongue before I even realized my coffee had gone cold. I crouched down close enough to smell the fresh adhesive. Whoever stuck it there had done it less than a day ago, probably late at night when decent people were asleep. My phone buzzed in my hand as I snapped photos, framing the serial number in the corner of the lens. Evidence. Because this wasn't just a nuisance, it was someone crossing a line. I peeled the sticker off, slow enough for the glue to stretch and snap. The plastic bag in my pocket crinkled loud in the still morning as I sealed it inside. Too loud, almost like I wanted her to hear it, and she did. Her shoes crunched over the gravel path behind me. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Pre-event safety inspection," she said, pen already scratching across her clipboard. Her voice was so matter-of-fact, like she wasn't trespassing, like she was logging a routine check on community property. My community property. The sound of her pen grated worse than nails on glass. Every scratch felt like she was carving away at my rights. I kept my voice even, steady, though my hands trembled from something hotter than nerves. "That sticker grew on my wood by itself, huh?" I muttered, half to myself. She froze mid-word. "Excuse me." "Nothing," I said, "just bagging evidence." Her eyes narrowed. I could almost hear the note she wrote. Hostile homeowner. Uncooperative, dangerous. I didn't care. Because in my back pocket sat the one thing she couldn't argue with, the deed. Every square foot of that lakefront bought and paid for. Behind me, the porch door creaked open. My wife stepped out, her mug warming her hands. She didn't say anything, but her presence steadied me. We'd chosen this house 3 months ago for the water, for the quiet mornings where you could hear dragonflies buzz and the low creak of the gate when the breeze caught it. And now, some self-appointed queen of the neighborhood thought she could march in and declare it hers. By the time she turned and walked off, clipboard tucked tight against her chest, she looked less like a neighbor and more like someone planning their next move. Calculating. Cold. Her shoes disappeared around the bend, but the yellow stickers stayed bright against the weathered wood. I ran a thumb over the evidence in my pocket. It felt heavier than it was, like proof had weight. My gaze slid over the rippling water, the mist just starting to burn off, and I realized this wasn't about stickers. It wasn't about inspections. It was about someone systematically trying to claim what I had earned, as if shouting loud enough could rewrite the county records. I finished the last bitter sip of coffee and headed inside. My wife's eyes followed me, questioning, worried. "I need to make some calls," I told her, pulling up the county clerk's office on my laptop. Because if someone thought they owned my lake, I was damn well going to find out why. The hammering started before sunrise, not the kind of hammering you hear from a neighbor fixing a fence. This was heavy, rhythmic construction hammering. It shook the stillness of the lake like thunder rolling in too soon. I threw on yesterday's jeans and stepped outside, the smell of wet grass clinging to the air. My boots crunched on the gravel as I rounded the bend, and what I saw made my stomach knot. There were people everywhere. Bright vests, banners strung between my trees, a half-assembled row of chairs facing the water. It looked less like a Saturday morning and more like a carnival setting up. One young guy, barely out of college by the look of him, stopped mid-swing with his mallet when he spotted me. He gave me a cheerful nod. "Morning, almost done with the safety perimeter." Safety perimeter, my lake, my yard. He said it so casually, as if it belonged to all of them. I kept my voice calm, though my chest was tight. What people are you making this safe for? He hesitated, the mallet hung awkward in his hand. The community, of course. Mrs. Pierce said lake access opens next month. There it was again. That word, access. Like they were preparing for a grand opening of something that was never theirs to begin with. I pulled my phone out, thumb sliding over the camera button, recording everything. The banners that read Beautification Day. The volunteers hammering solar lights into the ground. The sound system stacked by my dock, cables coiled like snakes waiting to wake. Every detail was evidence. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to shifted uncomfortably when they saw the lens on them. No one wanted to be caught in the middle, but here they were, caught on tape. I asked the boy again, softer this time, "Who authorized this?" He tilted his head toward the parking lot, and there she was, clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding her eyes, giving orders like she was a foreman. Pierce, my trespasser turned ringleader. By noon, my shoreline looked unrecognizable. Plastic chairs lined the grass, speakers faced the lake, and bright lights stabbed into the soil like it was some outdoor arena. My wife stood at the porch, arms wrapped around herself, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, "I can't sleep like this, not with all that." That was it, no more silence. I set my coffee down, picked up my laptop, and began printing complaint forms. Fire marshal, environmental protection, county planning department. Every agency that had authority, I wanted them looking at my case. If they wanted permits, I'd show them what real permits looked like. The clack of my printer filled the kitchen, each page another nail in the coffin of their lies. My wife brought me a pen, steadying my hand. "Do it," she said, and I did. By mid-afternoon, the chaos outside swelled louder. Music checks, neighbors chatting, the smell of grilled wafting through the breeze. My sanctuary had become a theme park. And then the real gut punch. A sheriff's car rolled down my driveway, tires crunching the gravel, lights off, but that official weight in the air. My heart slammed hard against my ribs. The deputy stepped out, looking tired and unimpressed. "Mr. Blake?" he asked, scanning his clipboard. "Yes, sir. I've received a complaint. Says you're harassing volunteers and interfering with community safety operations." I blinked, my jaw tightened. Harassment, for filming on my own property, for refusing unauthorized construction. I said nothing at first. Instead, I handed him my deed, paper against clipboard. His eyes scanned line by line, pausing at the survey boundary. Then he looked up, voice lower now. "This is yours, every inch of it." He called out to her, the woman with the clipboard. "Ma'am, this man owns this property. He's not harassing anyone. You filed a false report." For a second, the expression on her face almost made up for the chaos surrounding us. Almost, but she clutched that clipboard, lips pressing into a thin smile. "The HOA has usage rights, previous agreements, easements." The deputy shook his head. "Take it up in civil court, but you call my office again with false reports, you'll regret it." He left just like that, but the sound of hammering, the rows of chairs, the buzzing lights, they stayed. That night, our bedroom glowed like daylight. Artificial white beams cut through the curtains, bouncing off the walls until sleep became impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of equipment on land I owned. My wife whispered into the darkness, "How much longer can this go on?" I turned onto my side, clenched my fist tight, and made a promise. "Not much longer. Monday morning this stops." Monday morning came heavy, like the whole house carried the weight of someone else's lies. The artificial lights still hummed outside, spilling white streaks across the blinds. I brewed coffee, but it didn't taste like coffee anymore. It tasted like determination, like paperwork, like war. The first call I made was to the county clerk. My fingers drummed the table as the line clicked and held. When the clerk finally answered, her tone was brisk, distracted, like I was just another number in a stack of files. But when I gave her my parcel number, the silence on the line stretched too long. "Mr. Blake, there are no HOA covenants recorded on your property," she said carefully. "No easements, no shared rights of usage. It's marked as a private water body. Sole ownership, you." I should felt relief. Instead, my gut tightened. Then why is my lake listed as a community amenity on their website? That's when her voice shifted from detached to sharp. Website. I pulled up the page on my laptop and my stomach turned again. There it was, my dock, my water, photographed from my angle. But online it wasn't my lake. It was branded as Pleasant Valley HOA lakefront. Fishing tournaments, kayak races, family swim days, coming soon. The clerk's words were clipped now. Mr. Blake, could you email me screenshots with timestamps? I did, attaching every angle, every line of text. She promised to escalate it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just harassment. It was business. They were trying to monetize my property. By Tuesday, the county sent me an envelope stamped Public Records Request Response in angry red ink. I opened it right there at the mailbox, dust rising around my boots, heart pounding against the flap. Inside were the documents. Pleasant Valley HOA had applied for a county mini-grant, $18,000, for beautification and safety improvements to HOA community lake amenity. My lake, with Pierce's signature at the bottom, swearing it was all accurate under penalty of perjury. Every page made my pulse climb higher. Budget breakdowns with line items for lights, landscaping, seasonal dock maintenance. Event flyers boasting 90% resident approval. Estimated annual revenue of $100,000 in collected fees, all on something they didn't own. I showed the papers to my wife, her grip on my arm tightened with each line. They plan to charge $500 per household, she whispered, for access to our water. I could hear the disbelief in her voice, but me, I was past disbelief. This was fraud, plain and simple. That Saturday, the noise outside hit a new peak. I stepped onto the porch and what I saw nearly broke me. Volunteers in reflective vests hammered more lights into the soil. Banners stretched across trees I'd planted myself. And there, stacked neatly by the dock, rows of folding chairs for some kind of event. I grabbed my phone and filmed everything. Faces, equipment, grant stickers slapped on boxes of lights. Each click of the record button was fuel for the fire building inside me. But before I could finish, a shadow fell across the screen. Her shadow, clipboard in hand, that smug half-smile plastered on her face. "Quite the improvement, don't you think?" she said, admiring the chaos like it was a gift to the neighborhood. I clenched my jaw so tight it ached. "This isn't a park," I told her. "This is my yard." She tilted her head, pretending to be patient with me. "The community has certain rights when it comes to shared amenities. Our legal team has already confirmed it." Legal team, I almost laughed. I snapped a photo of her right there, framed among unauthorized lights and banners. Evidence, always more evidence. But the next blow came harder. A sheriff's deputy pulled into my driveway, crunching gravel under his tires, face carved in weariness. He held a form in one hand. "Mr. Blake, I've got a complaint here. Says you're interfering with community safety operations." There it was again, interfering, as if filming on my property was a crime. I handed him the deed, steady this time. He read it, compared it to the complaint, then called out too. His voice was flat but sharp enough to cut. "You filed a false report. This property belongs to him, every inch of it." For a brief second I saw her mask slip. Her lips tightened, her knuckles whitened around the clipboard, but she didn't argue, not out loud, not then. The deputy handed my deed back and shook his head. "Take it up in civil court. And Miss Pierce, you file another false report, you'll be the one answering questions." As his car rolled away, I stared at the shoreline glowing under stadium lights I never asked for. My wife whispered from the porch, "I can't live like this." I exhaled slow, feeling the paper weight of every form, every photo, every screenshot stacked on my desk inside. "You won't have to," I promised her. "Tomorrow it's their turn to explain." The morning started like any other. Coffee brewing, birds cutting through the cool air, dew glistening on the grass. For a moment I almost believed the nightmare was ending, until I saw the color of the water. It wasn't blue, it wasn't even gray. It was neon green. I dropped my mug, hot liquid splattering across the deck, and sprinted toward the shoreline. The southern stretch of the lake glowed like something radioactive, swirling in fluorescent ripples that caught the sunlight and burned against my eyes. My wife ran out, still barefoot, her hand gripping my arm so tight her nails dug in. "Is that safe?" she whispered. I was already dialing 911 when I heard voices near the storm drain. Men in reflective vests clustered around a steel drum labeled in black letters, "Industrial Fluorescent Dye." One of them was on the phone, saying words that made my blood boil. "Flow Research, Beautification Drainage Project." Beautification. That's what they were calling poisoning my lake. I didn't finish the 911 call. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Every angle, the barrel, the bright dye bleeding into the water, their faces, panicked now that they realized neighbors were watching, phones raised, already hitting the internet. They saw me, but they didn't stop, and that told me everything I needed to know. They thought they had permission. Sure enough, when I confronted them, one contractor stammered. Ms. Pierce approved the scope. Standard flow test. Said the HOA had blanket approval for lake management. Blanket approval. The phrase was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. By the time Sarah from County Environmental Services arrived, the damage was undeniable. Fish floated belly up near the glowing water line. A pair of bass, a cluster of bluegill. Not a mass die-off yet, but enough to turn stomachs. Enough to make my wife clutch me, her voice shaking. "This is our drinking water source. What if it had been worse?" Sarah didn't waste time. She pulled jars from her truck, dipping them into the toxic-looking water, her jaw clenched. "Industrial dye," she muttered. "Unpermitted, unauthorized, and not even the approved tracer kind." She turned to the contractor. "Where'd you get this?" He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages until one text shone under the sunlight. "Use industrial grade. Cheaper. Nobody will notice the difference." Signed by Pierce. Sarah photographed everything. The drum, the dye spreading across my lake like ink in a glass, the dead fish. "Mr. Blake, this is no longer just a county issue. EPA will be. Drinking water classification makes this a federal matter." Federal, the word carried a weight that even I wasn't ready for. My sanctuary had just become a crime scene. The contractors shifted uneasily. One of them said, "She told us it was legal. She said permits would slow down the project, said community needed results now." Sarah's response was cold. "The HOA has no legal authority over this property. You just dumped unauthorized chemicals into a protected buffer zone." Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the glow and the shouting. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Others filmed, whispering curses under their breath. And standing at the back of the crowd was clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't move, just watched as the chaos unfolded, as if measuring how much she could still get away with. I felt my jaw tighten until it hurt. This wasn't about stickers anymore. This wasn't about lights or chairs. This was contamination. Fraud backed by chemicals leaching into the water I drank, into the land I owned, into the sanctuary I'd built with every cent I had. Sarah sealed the jars, her tone sharp but steady. "Mr. Blake, until test results confirm safe levels, your property will be under mandatory monitoring, restricted access, possible remediation, and unless the responsible party accepts liability, cleanup costs fall to the landowner." I looked at the glowing water, at the fish drifting lifeless near the dock, at my wife's pale face. The thought of paying to clean up their crime almost broke me, but Sarah caught my expression. "If we can prove authorization was fraudulent, and with these texts we can, the costs shift to the one who gave the order, and that's not you." I exhaled, slow and shaky. This was bigger now, bigger than late-night stickers and fake websites. This was county fraud, environmental crime, federal oversight. And through it all, that clipboard queen stood at the edge of my property, silent, calculating, as if she still believed she could win. I stared back at her and made a silent promise. "This ends with you." The county called me before sunrise. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, and for a second I thought it was just another restless dream. But the voice on the other end was sharp, awake, all business. "Mr. Blake, we've reviewed your complaints. Bring your deed to the assessor's office this morning. There's something you need to see." The drive felt longer than it was. The air smelled of damp asphalt, my boots tapped the brake too often, and my wife's hands stayed clenched around mine the whole ride. When we walked into that conference room, the weight of it hit me. Not just one official waiting, three. Sarah from Environmental, Tom from County Records, and a man I hadn't met yet, a fraud investigator named. The table was covered in property maps and folders stamped confidential. Tom pointed to my parcel, highlighted in yellow. Your lake, Mr. Blake, private water body, sole ownership, no HOA rights, no easements. I nodded, I already knew that. But then he slid another folder forward. Flyers, posters, documents stamped with HOA letterhead claiming my lake as a community amenity. And not just that, insurance paperwork. Opened his laptop, the glow reflecting off his glasses. 2 months ago, Ms. Pierce filed a claim with HOA's insurance company. She requested reimbursement for lake property damages caused by community use. Claimed it was an HOA-managed amenity. She tried to get insurance to cover repairs and upgrades on land she didn't own. Insurance fraud. My breath caught in my chest. Every page he showed me was another knife in the back, false covenants, liability claims, signatures scribbled like they meant something. And then Tom dropped the real bomb. She even attempted to reclassify your property, filed a petition 6 weeks ago to label your lake as community shared space. We rejected it. I personally called her attorney and told them it was fraudulent. He paused, his voice hard. She did it anyway. My laugh was bitter, hollow. So she told me I wasn't in her HOA while simultaneously trying to make my property part of her HOA. Sarah shook her head, disgusted. This isn't confusion. This is deliberate. She used your lake as collateral to secure grant money, insurance coverage, and community fees. And now, she tapped her folder, we've got texts, contracts, and signatures tying it all to her name. As if on cue, Tom's phone rang. He listened, face tightening, then put it on speaker. A sheriff's deputy's voice filled the room. Bradley, I have Ms. Pierce here at the station. She's attempting to file amended property claims. Says she has original HOA documents from 1987 proving the lake was always community property. Tom's expression darkened. That's impossible. The HOA didn't exist until '89. Whatever she's holding, it's a forgery. We drove to the sheriff's office in a convoy. My boots clicked on the tiled floor as we walked in, each step echoing with a mix of anger and anticipation. She was there already, clutching a manila folder like it was her lifeline. These are original covenants, she insisted, sliding the papers across the desk. Clearly stating lake access as community amenity. Tom picked them up, flipping slowly. He didn't need more than a glance. Wrong paper stock, wrong font, and this notary seal, it's dated a decade later than the document claims. These are forgeries. Her face drained of color, then flushed red. She stammered, that's impossible. My lawyer found them. What lawyer? Cut in sharp. The one you told contractors approved everything, the one you said your blanket authority. She fumbled with her phone, avoiding our eyes, and in that silence the truth was obvious. There was no lawyer, just her lies stacked so high they were starting to crush her. Sarah placed a report on the desk, her voice steady. Ms. Pierce, you authorized the unpermitted discharge of industrial chemicals into a drinking water source. You cut corners to save $50 a gallon. You signed fraudulent grant documents. And now you're presenting forged covenants to law enforcement. My voice came out low, but every word burned. It's not a community amenity. It's my property. Always has been. The sheriff's deputy leaned back, eyes narrowing at her. Ma'am, you understand this could result in criminal charges, fraud, forgery, false reporting. Her clipboard sat on the chair beside her, useless now. For the first time, she looked small. Shaken, but not sorry, never sorry. And as we left that office, walking back into the daylight, I realized something. She wasn't going to stop. Not until someone bigger than me made her. But with every lie she signed, every document she forged, she was digging her own grave. And I was done being quiet. The county hearing room smelled of old wood and nervous sweat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, but nothing hummed louder than the anticipation in that packed space. Neighbors filled the benches, whispering in low voices. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with suspicion, but all of them came to see what would finally happen when truth faced paperwork. My wife sat beside me, her hand squeezing mine under the table. I could feel the tremor in her grip. Across the aisle, sat stiff in a chair, a fresh attorney by her side. The clipboard that once made her feel powerful was gone. In its place, stacks of violation notices, fraud reports, and environmental assessments lay waiting to be read aloud. The chairman cleared his throat, microphone buzzing with feedback that made everyone flinch. This hearing concerns multiple complaints against Pleasant Valley HOA and its president, Ms. Pierce, regarding unauthorized use of private property, environmental violations, and fraudulent documentation. The first slide appeared on the projector, my lake glowing an unnatural green under the lens of Sarah's camera. Gasps rippled across the room. Even people who had defended shook their heads now, whispers cutting sharp through the silence. Violation 1, unpermitted construction in a protected buffer zone. The screen flicked to photos of solar lights, each one stamped with GPS coordinates. 57 installations, none approved. Violation 2, unauthorized chemical discharge. The neon water spread across the 10-foot projection like radioactive ink. Dead fish floated in the photo, their bellies white against the green glow. My wife's nails dug into my palm as the audience murmured louder. Violation 3, attempted property tax fraud. The rejected reclassification petition appeared next, stamped in red ink. DENIED, fraudulent. Violation 4, insurance fraud. Stepped to the podium, his voice firm, presenting emails and claims where it demanded reimbursement for damages to community lake property. He paused, holding the paper up. Property that legally belongs to Mr. Blake. The chairman looked over his glasses. Ms. Pierce, do you wish to respond? She stood, shoulders stiff, voice trembling just enough to betray the panic she tried to hide. Mr. Blake entrapped me. He misled the HOA. He encouraged improvements, then turned around and complained. He's weaponized the county against us. I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that slipped out. The chairman frowned, motioning me forward. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling to the audio recordings I'd saved. Her voice filled the room, sharp and undeniable. You're not in the HOA, so the community amenities are ours to control. My reply followed, steady. This is private property. Check the deed. Silence spread across the benches. A few neighbors leaned back, arms crossed, glaring at her now instead of me. Sarah presented her findings next. Chemical analysis, fish mortality reports, aquifer contamination risks. This is not a simple permit violation. This is environmental damage to a drinking water source. It's under federal review. Her new lawyer tried to deflect, blaming contractors. But the contractors had already provided screenshots, texts from instructing them to buy cheaper dye, to skip permit paperwork, to keep costs low. Each message appeared on the screen, her name glowing like a signature of guilt. The bombshell came from Officer Martinez. Ms. Pierce, records show you served as HOA president at Riverside Commons in 2015. That community documented similar complaints, unauthorized improvements on private land, fraudulent fee collection, property disputes. You resigned after a lawsuit settlement. The whispers erupted again. This wasn't her first scheme. It was a pattern. The chairman rapped his gavel. Order. His tone was flat but heavy. This board will deliberate briefly. 12 minutes, that's all it took. When they returned, the verdict was read with no hesitation. The respondent, Ms. Pierce, is found in violation of county code for unpermitted construction, fraudulent documentation, environmental discharge, and attempted property rights manipulation. The orders followed one by one, each striking like a hammer. Remove all unauthorized equipment within 48 hours. Pay fines totaling $27,000 within 30 days. Issue public correction letters, signed personally. Permanent ban from holding HOA office in the county. Slumped mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but her eyes stared blankly at the desk. The chairman slid the acknowledgement form across. Signed to confirm receipt of order. Failure to sign constitutes contempt. Her hand shook as she gripped the pen. The scratch of ink on paper was faint, but it sounded to me like the final crack in her empire. Neighbors filed out slowly, talking in hushed voices. One man approached me, eyes downcast. "I paid $500 in lake fees last year. Can we get refunds?" Officer Martinez overheard. "Civil claims may be filed within 30 days. Given fraud findings, restitution will likely fall on Ms. Pierce personally." I walked out into the warm evening air with my wife beside me, the courthouse lights casting long shadows across the parking lot. She looked up at me, searching my face. "Is it really over?" I exhaled, the weight of months of chaos pressing off my chest. Legally, yes, the fight's done, but the cleanup, that's still ahead. The county administration building smelled like paper and tension. Neutral ground, they'd called it. But as I sat at that long oak table, with my lawyer on one side and a stack of evidence on the other, it felt more like a courtroom without a jury. Across from me walked in. No sunglasses this time, no clipboard, just a pale face, red-rimmed eyes, and an attorney who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The room was full. Tom from county records, Sarah from environmental, with insurance files, even the sheriff's deputy who'd once been called to my driveway. Every one of them carried folders, binders, reports. Each document another stone stacked against her. Tom started, his voice calm but heavy. "Property records show sole ownership by Mr. Blake. No covenants, no easements, no HOA rights. This has been the case for over 40 years. Sarah followed. "Environmental violations include unauthorized construction, chemical discharge, and wildlife damage. Fines total $12,000 so far, with remediation costs pending." Stepped in next. "Insurance claims filed fraudulently for damages to property not owned. Attempted liability coverage for false amenities. Criminal referral is pending with the state commissioner." The sheriff added, "False police report filed against the property owner. Documented, recorded." It wasn't a discussion, it was a dismantling. Piece by piece, everything she had built was stripped bare in front of her. My lawyer slid a single document across the table. The no-rights statement, simple, direct, binding. The HOA acknowledges it has no rights to the lake or buffer zone. All unauthorized installations must be removed within 48 hours. Fines and remediation costs to be paid. In return, Mr. Blake will not pursue additional civil litigation. Her attorney leaned close, whispering rapidly. She shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "I can't just give up community assets," she said loudly. "The residents depend on access. They expect amenities." Tom leaned forward, his voice sharp. "You promised amenities on property you don't own. That's not asset management, that's fraud." The door opened. A contractor stepped in, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm here for the emergency removal invoice. Solar lights, storm drain modifications, banners. Total cost $8,000. Personal check or lien on your house, Ms. Pierce." She looked at him like he'd betrayed her. "This is harassment. Mr. Blake is trying to destroy the HOA because he doesn't want to be a good neighbor." I laughed, not kindly. "A good neighbor doesn't poison my water. A good neighbor doesn't forge covenants. A good neighbor doesn't commit fraud." Her attorney placed a hand firmly on her arm. His voice dropped into steel. "Ms. Pierce, I strongly advise you to sign. The alternative is criminal charges and bankruptcy." She tried again, reaching for excuses. "I have medical records, stress, discrimination, anxiety." Sarah didn't blink. Stress doesn't excuse falsifying grant documents and dumping industrial chemicals in a drinking water source. Added or insurance fraud, or forged covenants, or false reporting. The air in the room tightened, and then Tom's phone buzzed. He read the message, his mouth tightening into something between disbelief and grim satisfaction. "The HOA treasurer just resigned, effective immediately. He cites loss of confidence in leadership and potential liability for unauthorized actions." Another buzz. "The secretary just resigned too, and one board member." 3 resignations in 10 minutes. Her own board was abandoning ship. My lawyer tapped the statement again, calm but unyielding. "The offer stands for 10 minutes. Sign it or we file everything: civil fraud, environmental damage, insurance claims, criminal referrals. You'll be facing all of it at once." Her attorney turned to her, firm now. "Sign or find new representation. I won't defend this." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Her hand shook as she picked up the pen. Slowly, almost painfully, she scratched her name across the page. That was it. Months of schemes, lies, and forgeries boiled down to one shaky signature. A surrender, a confession, a death sentence for her illusion of power. Tom notarized it on the spot, stamping it into county record. Sarah photographed it for the environmental file, scanned it for insurance. My lawyer folded it neatly into his case. As we stood, my wife squeezed my hand. "Is it over?" she asked softly. "Legally, yes," I told her. "For her, it's just beginning." Because the truth was, while I walked out free, Pierce had just shackled herself to every consequence she thought she could outrun. And the walls were closing in faster than she ever imagined. The days after the settlement felt unreal. For the first time in months, the shoreline was quiet. No hammering, no generators buzzing, no banners cutting across the trees. Just the sound of wind brushing the water, the creak of my old dock in the afternoon sun. But while my lake was settling, her world was collapsing. The county posted the no rights statement publicly. Neighbors who had paid lake fees stormed the HOA office demanding refunds. Word spread fast. The grant was revoked, fines were confirmed, and board members had resigned in droves. By the end of the week, the Pleasant Valley HOA had no president, no treasurer, and no secretary. It was a hollow shell, limping on paper but already dead in practice. I saw her once more just briefly outside the grocery store. No clipboard this time, no sunglasses, just a plastic bag of milk and bread swinging from her wrist. Her hair was pulled back, her shoulders slumped, her eyes darting like she expected every glance to be judgment. Maybe they were. Neighbors whispered as she passed. One muttered, "She almost cost us our homes." Another shook her head. All that for a lake that was never hers. The sheriff's office kept me updated. Fraud charges were under review, insurance investigators were circling, and civil claims from residents were piling up. Every cent she tried to squeeze out of me was now clawing back at her from all sides. Meanwhile, my property slowly healed. Contractors, real ones this time, hired by the county, removed the solar lights, pulled the banners from my trees, capped the altered storm drain. The green stain in the water thinned and faded with each rainstorm, washed out into the soil until the lake reflected sky again. One evening, I stood at the water's edge with my wife. The sun dipped low, setting the surface on fire with gold. A heron glided across, wings stretched wide, dipping its beak into the calm. My wife leaned into me, her voice soft. "It feels like we've got it back." I nodded, my chest heavy with relief. "We do." But I also knew something else. This wasn't just about land. It was about dignity. About standing when someone tried to strip away what you built, what you loved, what was yours. For months, I had been painted as the difficult neighbor, the holdout, the man who would share. But the truth was simple: sharing only works when it's real, when it's chosen, not stolen, and had never been interested in community. She was interested in control. The county closed its file 3 weeks later. "Case resolved," the letter said in plain type. But it didn't capture the storm it had been, the weight it had carried, the nights we couldn't sleep because white lights glared through our curtains. It didn't mention the humiliation of being accused of harassment on land that was legally mine. It didn't tell the story of the fish that died glowing green in water meant to be safe. That story lived in us, and it would live in every neighbor who'd watched her stand tall with a clipboard one month and crumble under investigation the next. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive in a flash. Sometimes it grinds slow, like gears turning until the weight becomes unbearable. But when it lands heavy. I sat on the porch one evening, boots kicked up, listening to the sound of crickets and the soft lap of water against the dock. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for headlights to pull up, for hammering to start, for lies to knock on my door. Peace had finally returned. And as the last light of day melted into the horizon, I whispered to myself a lesson I'd earned the hard way. You don't have to fight every battle. But when the fight comes to your doorstep, sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to stand. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.